Hey, welcome to another episode of Chad's Beer Podcast Archive Edition. You can see I got my old 2009 or whatever year I got this shirt. I still have it after all these years. Anyway, this week's guest is Daniel Harper. He was also known as the Endosymbiosis. He was out of Michigan, and I think he actually changed his channel name to Michigan Beer Vlog or Michigan Beer Review after a while. I can't 100% remember. So, Daniel, if you're watching, please let me know in the comments. Dan and I actually we did a couple of beer trades. He was the first person I ever got Founders KBS from. I remember he sent me some homebrews. I sent him some homebrews. We did a few collab reviews. I remember we reviewed Amagang Hennepin because I remember I always hated that beer and he loved it. And he kind of like changed my mind on that one a little. Yeah. So this is another two-parter. Like I interviewed him. It was like around November of 2010, and then again in April of 2012. And it's funny because in neither of these episodes he had his trademark, super epic beard that came down to his chest. In fact, on the second part of this interview, you'll see him like clean shaven. It was like the day that he shaved, and then he grew the beard back. I don't know if he still has it or not, but this is about as epic as a beard as I can get. So anyway, so please enjoy this archive review, and Daniel, if you're watching, hit me up. Thanks. Hey, welcome to another episode, and it's been a long time, of Interview with a Craft Beer Enthusiast. I'm joined by Dan Harper, better known as the Endosymbiosis here on YouTube.
Hey Chad, thanks for having me. How's it going?
Well, I always like to start at the beginning, so basically it's just kind of a broad general statement. What is your history with beer from age 0 to whenever you first started drinking?
Well, I grew up. I grew up in Alabama, which you guys who watch my channel will know. But I grew up in Alabama, which is a real conservative area. Lots of blue laws, lots of not a lot of alcohol. It just wasn't part of like my existence, and I didn't grow up in a drinking family. So
Right.
I was a giant nerd. So I didn't really start drinking until I was 24. Until I was well after the legal limit, and I started because I was on an online forum because I'm a giant nerd like that, and was talking to people who were talking about like how good craft beer was or how good beer could be, and I'm like, well, that sounds like an interesting nerdy hobby for me to try. And so I literally just started like researching stuff online, like which beer should I try? Like it was very much, and everybody, like it's so weird to like try to learn it that way and not have somebody to like hold your hand through it or anything,
Right.
and not to do it like a social way, but to literally like look up stuff on the internet and try to, because I tried a lot of, really crappy beer because I just didn't know any better. But one of the things I try to do with my channel is I try to make it accessible to people. And it's a lot easier to get started now than it was 5 or 6 years ago. But
Right.
it's a lot. That's one of the things I try to do is one of the reasons I wanted to do it was just to make it easier for people. But, I started when I was 24 and I haven't looked back since. So.
Well, you said you started with crappy beer. What was a crappy beer, and then what was like your transition to good beer?
The first beer I ever ordered, the first beer I ever bought, well, my parents would buy Michelob every so often, Michelob lager. And so that was kind of my exposure to beer at all. The first beer I ever ordered in a restaurant was, I was in a Mexican restaurant, and I ordered Carta Blanca, the Mexican lager, because I had read somewhere where somebody said, this is the best beer I've ever had. And I'm like, all right, so I'll try it, And, you try it and you're just like, okay, that's what beer tastes like, Another I had read where somebody said Franziskaner Hefeweiss was a great beer. And that was really the beer that was like, this is amazing. Like this stuff, I really love this. This is something that I can be passionate about. That was really the first time that I ever like really fell in love with one beer. And then stouts, I got into Sam Adams Cream Stout. Actually was one of the first like stouts I tried because you hear things about stouts and you don't know a lot about beer. It's
Right.
like, oh, they're bitter and they're heavy and they're bad and what. And that one, and then Macca's Triple X was like my first. This is amazing.
What years were these? Was this?
This was all within like the first 6 months or so I started drinking. So when I was 24, so this was all like really early in that process.
How long ago was this?
This was 6 years ago.
Okay.
I joined Beer Advocate right about that time, and I started reviewing like in I think March of '05. So
Yeah. Yeah, so you said you joined Beer Advocate back in the day. Were you just writing little blurbs and things like that?
I started out doing like these little mini essays for every beer. I mean, you look at those early ones, and they're like 7, 8 paragraphs long. Some of them, where it's like this. I'm trying to do like movie reviews. Like I come from that background a little bit too,
Right.
so like trying to write like 3 sentence paragraphs, and then like in a like appearances, it looks like this, it has this quality, and
Right.
then eventually it got more comfortable, and I just started doing, more kind of sketches of the beer, and it just depends on the beer. Sometimes I just do like a real simple like, oh yeah, it's brown color, whatever, give it a rating, be done with it, and then sometimes I get a little bit more involved with it.
How
So
many text reviews do you think you've written?
I think currently I'm at I have 432 or something like that.
Well,
Uh,
what's your screen name on Beer Advocate?
I'm Daniel Harper on Beer Advocate.
Okay.
So easy to
Um,
find. I'm not the Endosymbiosis.
yeah. So at what point were you like, or maybe you didn't think this, but this is how I find that most beer tubers are, was that they didn't want to just be another anonymous user on Rate Beer and Beer Advocate. What made you say that's not good enough? I need to put my face out there on YouTube.
I mean, ultimately, I got a little bored with the Beer Advocate formula, and I was
Right.
doing them on my blog. I've been doing them on my blog for a long time, but I was getting bored with that layout of how to do a beer review. And so it was kind of like, well, I'll start doing videos and I'll just do something completely different just to like reinvigorate myself in the process and to enjoy the hobby a little bit more. So for me, it was really more a whim. I mean, if I ever thought like I'm going to do this as a, like that I'm going to shoot 100 reviews, and keep going, I wouldn't have just picked like the random name that I had for
Hmm.
my YouTube channel as my handle. I would have done it a little bit more, concretely. But it's been a lot of fun, and I get a lot of really cool comments. And that was another thing is, I put them on my blog, and I get like no feedback on it at all. I mean, it would really just kind of be, I
Right.
get like 40 hits on the entire blog per week, which is fine. I mean, it's a little blogspot blog. But then, like the very first video I put up, I got 6 hits, and I went, 6 hits! Oh my god, this is the future! Like it was really like, I'm like 6 people clicked on this, cared enough to click it.
What was the
So
first video beer review you did?
the first video I did was Avery the Reverend. It's their quad,
Yeah.
and that video is terrible. I would take it down, except I feel like I shouldn't take it down. But it's a really really terrible video. I mean, the review is fine. Like I feel confident with like what I said about the beer, but I'm really just like sitting there. I'm really quiet, and I'm just like slight burnt notes. I mean, like it's a very. I'm not looking at the camera. I'm very
Right.
embarrassed to be there. And it was really like the sort of thing of I got tired. Not I got It was really just the sort of issue that I've been writing reviews so long that I was trying to kind of adopt the same voice for videos, and you really can't do that. So I kind
Right.
of come across as like pretentious, and I come across as a bit of an asshole in that first couple of reviews, just because I'm what works in text doesn't work in a video. So
Right.
it
So
was
when did
definitely.
you start getting actively participating in the YouTube beer review scene? Like start like actively watching and commenting on other beer tubers.
Well, once
And
I started uploading them, I started, I just wanted to like see how other people did it, and I started to be like, well, I'm gonna subscribe to like every YouTube beer reviewer I can.
right.
I'm gonna watch like a bunch of videos, and it was just like I wanted, like, we are people who do this. We are people who sit in front of a camera and review things. We're opinionated people, and so like there are plenty of them where I'm like, I don't like the way this person does it. I like the way this person does it, and it's just like a personal preference kind of thing, and it kind of gave me some guidelines as to what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And it's not even like I don't like this person's reviews and I don't think they should do it, as much as that's not what I want to do in my channel.
Right.
So
So who are some of your favorite beer tubers?
well, I'm on the Beer Geek Nation thing now, and I really do like Chris's reviews, although I don't shoot reviews the way he does. He has such great production values. But I mean, I like your reviews. I'll tell you, I like Kevin, the foaming head. He's always seems to be like know his stuff like really really well. Shoots really good videos, and he's just got a lot of personality. I like his stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Master of Hoppets, he's just like that dude is so entertaining. I could just sit and watch. He could read a phone book, and I would.
Yeah.
Watch
He's never made a bad video.
I don't think he has ever, and I'm just like it's really funny to me, So I try to watch a little bit of everybody's, but those are the
Right.
like people that I definitely like. I will sit down and watch no matter what the review is.
So getting to actual beer, like what is your criteria, like your personal criteria for what makes for a good or bad beer? Like how would you explain your rationale for the various aspects of appearance, aroma, taste, all that stuff?
Well, for me, I think that I really try to go within style, and I try to understand what the brewer intended from a beer. And sometimes that's like, okay, look at the ad copy or whatever. Although I try not to read bottles and that sort of thing. But sometimes it's just like you try the beer and you're like, well, obviously, like Old Curmudgeon is clearly not trying to be like a big hoppy barley wine.
Right.
So you can't like judge it and say like, oh well, there's not enough hops in this, and so I don't like it. So for me, I do try to judge within what I think the brewer intended, and I try to judge them. I try to judge it the way that I would want to be judged as a brewer. Like if you were reviewing one of my home brews, I'd hope that you would take what I intended the beer to be into account, and that style. That's
right.
But it's also, I think, complexity is something that's good for me. I mean, like if it's complex, it really gives you something to talk about, something to think about. And just if it's something that I kind of come to the end and I'm like, you know what, I want another one of those. That's often like the ultimate thing is like, a really like an A beer is usually just one where I finish it and I go, I'm gonna go open another one. Like that's what it means to me almost.
Right. Yeah, but how do you actually like review the beer? Like, how much emphasis do you place on the various aspects? Like as far as like does aroma play a big role or a small role, and things like that?
Well, again, I did it on Beer Advocate for so long that five step system is just ingrained in my head. Like
Right.
it will always be right there. For me, I do kind of consider. I mean, a beer with a really good appearance that doesn't taste all that good is usually going to not get a great grade, but I'll definitely bump it up a little bit for a really good appearance or for a really good aroma. For me, the most important thing, I mean, I am much more interested in aroma sometimes than flavor.
Right.
Which is I find that most of what you taste is really what you smell anyway, because your olfactory organ has like 90% of your total. So for me, it's like being able to smell it is sometimes more interesting and more you get a lot more out of it than the flavor necessarily. And so I definitely bump things up that smell good that don't necessarily taste as good, but I try to kind of keep everything in mind. When you're shooting a video, you're kind of rushing through it a little bit more. You're kind of doing it, you can't really sit and contemplate quite as easily. And so I can't say I always do it, but I do try to kind of keep in mind like the different qualities of it. So I'm definitely interested in how a beer looks and how it smells and all that kind of stuff when I do a
Right.
rating.
Now, to get a little more philosophical, and we've talked about this before, basically what it comes down to is taste, subjective or objective? Because like, I've gotten like discussions with people about this. It's just like, well, if all the experts agree that these types of beers are the best, then it's a fact that they are. Do you buy into that? Can you argue like in actually almost scientific terms? Because I know you've studied like biology and chemistry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm a big
you could
science
say,
nerd too,
like
so
this beer is made with higher quality ingredients than Budweiser or something. Um, would you like in a kind of more philosophical, artsy kind of sense? Do you like, do you buy into that? Like that there's actually it's a fact that certain beers are better than others, or is it a series of subjective opinions all compiled?
well, it's ultimately, I think that there's an interesting concept that comes from philosophy of science, actually,
Right.
where you've kind of answered the question as far as I'm, you, there's a concept called like intersubjectivity, where you and I will both see some where what is objective reality is not necessarily knowable,
Right.
but if you and I both can examine a piece of evidence and come to the same conclusions based on that evidence, then the fact that you and I may not ever be able to know objectively what that is less important. So the fact that like if 1,000 beer geeks review a beer and give it a really good rating gives it like some heft to say like that's probably a really good beer.
Right.
But at the same time, ultimately, taste is subjective, and if you like it or I like it or you don't or I don't or whatever, ultimately that's what Bud Light is the best selling beer in the world. I
Right.
mean, and I don't think either one of us would call that a great beer by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
Um, so
But even
ultimately,
the even what quality is definitely open to interpretation as well.
ultimately it is interpretation, but ultimately as a science person I can say there's a certain chemical compound in this glass. There like I could run this through a spectroanalysis and I could like analyze exactly what's in this beer and I could tell you, and
Right.
that could be beer review, like 6% this, 7% this, whatever. That's what the beer, but ultimately what it tastes like is subjective, and it is like what it means to you and kind of like the way the flavors play out. So ultimately it's subjective, but it has objective elements. But I don't think that like you know a million beer geeks saying Bud Light tastes like shit doesn't mean Bud Light necessarily tastes like shit. I guess is
Right.
the
Yeah. What are your personal tastes? Are you more a stout guy, a hoppy guy, or are you just appreciator of everything?
I try to be able to, as a beer geek or beer critic, I make definite effort to try to appreciate every style. Um, Even if there are styles that I don't like American pale wheat ales, for instance, is a
Right.
style I'm not into at all. But I feel like I could tell you a good one from a bad one, based on just having tried several of them and having tried a bunch of them and know kind of what they're supposed to taste like. For me, my favorite styles, I love Russian Imperial Stouts. I love barley wines. I do love IPAs and double IPAs, but I tend to like the ones with a little bit more of a malt backbone to them, where they're not just hops, which kind of sets me apart from some other beer geeks I know who just like super, super hoppy beers. I do like really hoppy beers, don't get me wrong.
Right.
Stone Ruination is one of my all-time favorite beers, but I do tend to like them a little bit maltier. But uh, those are kind of my big styles, really. And Belgians, I do love Belgians. I don't review nearly enough of them, but I really do love a really great Belgian beer.
Right.
Um, Saint Bernardus Abbot 12 is really good. I've got a bottle of that coming up for review soon. And then just a bunch of like the big dark malty ones. I mean, I tend to like darker beers as opposed to lighter ones, but I also really like a really well crafted pilsner. So
Yeah.
I'm all over the map.
And just to kind of wrap this around the beginning, something that you said at the beginning was like basically what is your goal here on YouTube or with your blog and all that? Like, is there anything you hope to accomplish, or just something that you're constantly working at? Like,
I'm definitely trying to. I mean, I have a passion for beer and for craft beer and good beer.
right,
I really try to share that with people, and I really want people to understand like it's not as hard as it sounds. So like when you go to Beer Advocate and you look at the 85,000 styles, it's not that complicated. I mean, it look like when I my goal I think on YouTube is really just to be able to take, if you're a newbie or if you're an expert, if you've been doing this 35 years or you just started yesterday, I want you to be able to look at my review and get something out of it, and I hope that I've taught you something or communicated with you. But I definitely would like to expand this hobby to people who are not pasty white guys like me, because it's a very pasty white guy kind of hobby right now.
yeah,
Um, it's something, there are other people who do it who are, women and that sort of thing. I'm not, I'm just saying that like, you look at the people who really get into it and it is very like straight white guy. And, that's something that I don't know how to work on that.
all right. So I guess that about wraps it up. You want to plug your websites, Twitter, Facebook, all
Yeah,
that stuff?
yeah. I'm I'm Daniel E. Harper on Twitter. Most of my names come from my actual name, which makes it easier for people. I
Hmm.
am at YouTube. I am youtube.com/the Endosymbiosis, and I'm sure you'll put a link on there for me. My website is danielharper.blogspot.com. I am on the Beer Geek Nation website now, so you can go to beergeeknation.com and you can go to contributors and click on Daniel, and you can see all my reviews that I've put on there. Um, that's pretty much it. I am on
So,
Facebook. I'm Daniel Harper on Facebook if you want to Facebook me, but that's just like personal friends of mine. Really, there's
right,
nothing
right.
nothing that goes on there that I can go everywhere else.
All right. Well, that's Dan Harper from the Endosymbiosis. Be sure to check him out. I think he's the most underrated beer tuber on YouTube right now. So thanks for doing this interview with Dan, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
No problem. I liked doing the review with you. Thanks for interviewing me, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye. Hey, welcome to another episode of Interview with a Craft Beer Enthusiast. We're talking again to Dan Harper, better known as the Endosymbiosis, better known as Beyond the Pour. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. It's been what, year and a half or so since I've been on this.
Since
Been
we
on
did the
this.
interview, probably, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
How long is it? You must be coming up on 2 years on YouTube.
May 31st will be 2 years for
May
me.
31st.
And my 350th review is coming up in like a few weeks. I'm
Yeah.
at three. I don't keep an exact count. I'm at like 327 or something like that. So
Huh. Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my first question was, you're just about 2 years as a beer tuber now. In our first interview, you talked about, like, when you were a text reviewer. So, I mean, what have you learned, in the last 2 years about, I mean, this could be like 10 different questions here. Like, what have you learned about beer? What have you learned about YouTube? What have you learned about, the beer industry? Or, however you want to answer that, what have you learned in the last 2 years?
well, yeah, this could be a whole like conversation right here. What have I learned in 2 years? On YouTube, it's definitely one of those things where I kind of found a community of people that were like watching what I was doing or paying attention to what I was doing in a way that I didn't before. Because when I was doing text reviews, I really didn't have an audience. I really didn't have like people that would like comment on every single review or would, talk to me about what I was drinking or anything like that. So definitely kind of being engaged to a community kind of helped me to, just feel like somebody's out there paying attention to it. So it's always nice. Um, also, it's definitely been one of those things where my palate has definitely improved. I mean, I feel like I had a pretty good palate even when I started doing videos just because I've been doing text so long. I mean, I've been doing this for so long, but the kind of impetus to try different things that I might not have tried has definitely affected that. And just, 2 years of experience, you know, within the industry. I mean, I kind of work in the industry right now, so that's had a lot more effect on the way I view things than my, my YouTube has affected. But it's been a very positive experience, and I think anybody who's interested in trying to get on YouTube and wants to talk about beer should try it. It's definitely been a positive thing, and at this point, it doesn't even take me that much time to make the videos. When I
Yeah.
first started, every video was like a 3 hour process of shooting and editing and all that stuff, and now I get down to probably about an hour per video is about how long it takes me for like a 5 minute video.
Like you're like in a routine now where you can just bust it out pretty quick. I notice
I've
your
been
videos
thinking
are
about.
like 5 minutes now.
I really, I really have been trying to get those videos shorter. Um, I don't know. There was something. Well, there's kind of two questions. The videos get shorter, and that's just like ultimately the process of making the videos just kind of comes down to you get into a routine, you kind of know what you're doing, and like when I first started doing this, I'm like every single video is going to be in a different location. Every single video is going to be, it's like I only have so many corners in my house. It's just so
Yeah,
I kind of have this like setup behind me here where I've got all these bottles, and I'm like I'll just shoot here,
yeah,
or I'll go to my porch, or I'll go to my front porch and shoot, in a couple locations, and people will just kind of get it, But
yeah.
as far as the video length getting shorter, that was definitely kind of grew out of. I kind of realized as I was shooting them and as I was watching videos, I always tried to make videos that I wanted to watch. And when I first started doing videos, I was like, man, if you only do like a 4-minute video, you're not really talking about the beer very much. You're not really, you're not really getting to it. But then as I started to get better at editing and I started to get better at like, okay, I'm going to put this video together in my head
Yeah.
before I even shoot the video. Like
Yeah.
as I'm shooting the video, and I started saying, I'm going to do a first impressions, then a final thoughts, So you get my immediate response, and then I can go away for 5 minutes and then figure out what I want to say about the beer, and then so that by itself cut every video from like 10 minutes to 8 minutes. Plus, I shoot the pour kind of before I don't pour on camera anymore.
Yeah.
I shoot a close up on the pour, and that cuts out another minute or so, 30 seconds or so, and just getting tighter and getting, just kind of realizing that not everything I say is golden and needs to be disseminated to the masses.
Yeah.
And also I try not to go on too many tangents. I try not to like talk about like what the style is and where it comes from. Like if you're watching my video, if you're watching a beer review, you know what an IPA is. I don't have to tell you what an IPA is. And that cuts a minute out of every video. So it really is just very simple stuff that, just kind of made the videos get shorter, and just kind of my realization that I really want to be, like, if I've got a lot to say, I'll talk for 8 minutes. But most videos, 4 to 5 minutes is kind of where I aim for, and they're almost always under 6. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah. You are one of the Beer Geek Nation guys now, or you have been for a while, I guess. What, did being a Beer Geek Nation guy make a huge difference for your statistics and things like that?
I joined Beer Geek Nation so early on from when I was doing this that I don't know that joining Beer Geek Nation itself didn't necessarily say suddenly your views go up 300% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Joining Beer Geek Nation and kind of becoming friends with, Chris and Ryan and Peter and Wenton and all those other guys, kind of helped me. That's kind of more that community, and kind of, we do a lot of communication behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily, that where we're just, talking and, bowling around at, 2 o'clock in the morning where we're drinking beers and chatting online. We do, there's a fair amount of that goes on, and that's, that conversation about the videos and just talking to people about like, oh, I tried this and people seem to like it, seems to kind of push us in this direction sometimes.
Yeah.
And certainly when we went out to San Diego and we all like met in person, that was one of those, like, that was a really fun event, and that was like, you really get like a sense of, okay, these are the 4 people who do this, like you get it, you understand. At one point in one of my videos, we're all sitting and filming at the same time, when I shot there, we're all filming at the same moment, and we all like pan our cameras to each other, and it's like, yeah, this is the same mindset, so.
Yeah, you beat me to my next question. I was gonna say, you finally met up with, most of the BGN guys out in San Diego. When was that? Last September, October?
That was November.
November? Yeah. I mean, like,
San Diego
what was it?
November 5th through the 12th, I think, 11th, something like that.
Was it everything you dreamed of and more?
Pretty much. That was, I shot more video, I think, than anybody did of that weekend, or that week. I was there for 5 days. Everybody else left, like Chris and Jameson left the day after I did, because I bought my plane tickets and didn't realize they were staying the extra day. So they actually stayed an extra day. But for me, it was like 5.5 days of drinking 12 hours a day, and that, it wears on you. It really does, because, Ryan was driving us because he's been to all these places. So it's not like, so we go to Alesmith and we're all like, oh man, I have to drink like everything. And Ryan's like, I come here every week, like, I could come here every week if I wanted to, so.
What was the highlight of the trip? Was it Stone? Did you get to meet Greg Cook?
I did not meet Greg Cook. I wanted to get my picture taken with Greg, like, hey, Greg Cook, I wanted that to be one of the things that I got out of it, but I did not get to meet him. I actually tweet with him every now and then.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've kind of met him through that. I did get to meet Dr. Bell, who's like the beverage coordinator. He's like the big beer geek guy who works for Stone. He plans all their events. I did
New Brew Thursday, I think he's on too.
I think he's probably on that, yeah. I met him, and I met Chef Alex, who does the food at Stone, and he was an awesome guy. And I met Mitch Daniels, who's the head brewer at Stone.
Mitch
And
Steele.
Mitch Steele,
Yes,
yes. I have my photo taken with Mitch Steele. Chris took the picture and sent it to me, and so that was my Facebook profile pic for a while. Was
Yeah.
me standing next to Mitch Steele, and that's definitely one of those things. But I mean, meeting people, I got to meet like really fun, just people in the community, people who are not necessarily like brewers. But I did get to meet a lot of fun people, and I got to hang out with the Beer Geek Nation guys, and I got to try a bunch of awesome beer. I mean, it was just literally, I mean, a lot of times we're doing like little 3-ounce samples, and it's just like 3-ounce sample, Pliny the Elder. Or my first full beer was Pliny the Elder, so we didn't even like do Pliny, but it was like, you know, this amazing Green Flash beer. Oh, West Coast IPA on cask. Oh, like, I mean, it's literally, probably my favorite experience when I was there, and I filmed this, and I was the only one who filmed it. But I'm getting to try Churchill's Finest Hour, which is an imperial stout that is released only at this bar Churchill's in San Diego, and it's on draft there, like for the day. They brew it at Lost Abbey. Only like 2 barrels of it are made. I mean, it's like tiny little release. But the 4 of us went to Churchill's and we shared a bottle, and that was just the camaraderie and just that was like one of my favorite experiences from San Diego, like of everything.
Getting back to BeerTube, you haven't had your girl your fiance on as a guest reviewer in a while. Is she gonna be on again in the future? And are you gonna have any other guest reviewers? Because aside from Skyping with other BGN guys or me or whoever, like I don't think I see that many guest reviewers on your show.
For me, it's I want to. Shana's my fiance. I'm getting married in November, by the way, and
Congratulations.
I would love to. I'd love to have her on. I'd love to get her opinion on stuff. The problem is that our schedules are kind of wonky, and I don't always, when I'm able to sit down and have a beer and do a beer review, it's not always when she wants to, or when she's like, I'm tired, I just don't want to do it, or I don't, like it's just one of those, our schedules don't always mesh up in that way, where we could, we can sit and we can have a beer together and we can talk about it, but like doing it on camera is not always, because just the pressures of, okay, the camera's got to go here and we got to sit in this chair and we got to do all this, and it's just kind of a hassle. I don't do a lot of collaboration videos anymore. Partly that's technical. I've had issues with my Skype and my recording software. They don't want to play nicely together. And I can do audio, but I can't do video. And so that's just kind of one of those things where it just kind of became that. And plus, everybody's doing collabs now, and I like doing them. I like having the conversation, but I also don't like having to edit it and then put it up on my channel, and then I get like 40 hits on it. It's just kind of, people look at them, and when I first started doing them, it was new and nobody was really doing it, or only a couple people were doing it. But now everybody's done it, and so it's just it's fun to do, and so I'm happy to be invited to do it, but I don't want to have to edit it and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, you're pretty hardcore, dedicated homebrewer. Have you ever thought about trying to make a career out of brewing? Have you put in like applications? I mean, you're right down the road from Founders and stuff.
I'm 10 minutes from Bell's. I'm like 45 from Founders in New Holland, and there are a bunch of breweries around here. The joke I sell is anybody who ever bought a mash tun has dreamed of one day working for a brewery or owning a brewery. Like that's just the thing. Like you get that. It's like rock and roll fantasy camp, where like you buy a guitar and you learn like 3 chords, and then suddenly you think like, I'm gonna go and be like one of the biggest rock stars in the world. And it's one of those things of, I don't brew enough. I have the technical, like for me it's like I have the technical knowledge to like design recipes and stuff, but not always like the stick to it to like take one recipe and make it 30 times until it's perfect, and that's what you have to do. And also just the lifestyle of a professional brewer. I mean, I know some brewers, I know quite a few, but the lifestyle is very, you go in at 2 a.m, you get off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of times, it's a lot of, it's not glamorous. It's not fun, like homebrewing. It's the difference between being a professional chef and being like, and cooking at home for yourself. And you love. You know, if you're cooking at home, it's like, oh, I make what I want. I get to play with it. I get to do all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. If you're a professional chef, you make the same, chicken parmesan 1,000 times a night, 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
Hot kitchen. So the reality of being a professional brewer, I don't know that I'd care about that. I'd love to be a professional like beer educator or professional beer journalist or commentator or like that. That's where I feel like I could do that for
Right.
70 hours a week. But going to work for a brewery and making beer, I mean, yeah, if somebody offered me the job, yes, I'd take it. But at the same time, I have not like put myself out there to the like, oh, I'd love to do that. I
Right.
have a really sick enough knowledge of like what that lifestyle would be that I wouldn't necessarily want to do that.
Are you working on BJCP or Cicerone certification?
I have the Cicerone beer server certification. I took that. I'm the kind of the beer specialist, beer manager, whatever you call it, at a local beer store or kind of
Beverage
wine
Center?
and beverage center. Um, and so I kind of was like, well, I'll take it. I'll take the exam. I had a very good possibility I was going to pass it because I've known a lot of other people who have it
Uh-huh.
who were not like super advanced in terms of like where I was in terms of beer knowledge. So I'm like, I'm just going to take it. I'll spend the $60. I'll try it. And I took it. I was drinking my fourth beer of the evening. I took it at midnight or something and passed it just fine. So I was like, okay, I mean, if you are a beer
Online?
online, yeah, the first level certification of the Cicerone is it's online. It's just like 50 questions, multiple choice. It really is just kind of a basic like, do you know the difference between American Pale Wheat Ale and a Hefeweizen? Do you know the difference? And it's like these are a list of like characteristics you would expect from this style and wouldn't expect from this style. And it'd be, it's fairly basic stuff. It's not
Right.
anything that I feel like is like super advanced. There's no like tasting exam for that. The second level I've been thinking about. It's $400, and at the level that I am in terms of like my job, I don't know that it matters. If I was going to try to go like manage a restaurant, if I was going to try to go like work for a distributor, and like it might make sense. But at the level that I am, I don't know that it really matters. And I feel like the Cicerone is definitely a professional certification. I mean, if people want to do it, they should do it. But it's like sommelier. I mean, a sommelier, you only really get a sommelier certification if you want to work with wine for a living, and that's what
Yeah.
the Cicerone is designed to be. That's what it is. It's a great certification, but if you're just an enthusiast and you don't want to go work in the industry, I don't know that it matters. As far as BJCP, that's very homebrew specific. That's very like you want to judge homebrew competitions, or you want to like kind of deal
Right.
with. That's a lot about detecting flaws that homebrewers make. That's a lot about knowing the details of like this style is ferments from 1080 to 1072, and then ferments down to 1018 to 1016 or something like that. Like, okay, these are the style guidelines, these are the flavor guidelines, these are the kind of hops that are available, or for that style. BJCP is great for the people who want to do it, and if I was involved in the homebrewing community a little bit more, I would probably do it. But I'm just not. I homebrew for myself and for a few friends of mine, and I encourage anybody who really wants to get into homebrew to do the BJCP, but I've just never bothered with it. I also work most Saturdays, and most homebrew events are on Saturdays, so it's just kind of, I have no
Yeah.
like specific reason to do that.
I can see some of the examples right behind you. What's some of the best beers you've had in the last 2 years, and what's some of the worst?
Um, the worst was 2 years since that I've actually shot on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, okay, worst was probably the Desperados beer that I had in Prague. That is, that video is one of those that I still get comments from people cursing me because it's like a frat guy beer in Europe. It's
Right.
beer with tequila. Um, it's terrible. It's like a champagne yeast kind of carbonation. It's like sweet, flat, but still like super fizzy tequila beer. It's like it tastes like if you take like champagne and tequila and like stale old macro lager and you just mixed it all in a bucket and then stirred it around and then poured it in a homebrew bottle and capped it. That's kind of what it tastes like. It's really terrible. So that was probably That one in like Ice House, because they did Ice House basically on a dare from Brian Ragland, who's Drink Like a Fish on YouTube. I
Yeah.
did it viewer request month. He requested Ice House, and I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do Ice House, whatever. But because he had just done it with his buddy, and I'm like, sure, I'll do it. So that video gets a lot. I'm proud of that video just because I think that one's really funny. So
What about the best?
the best. I mean, I've had so many great beers. I mean, there was a lot of great stuff in San Diego that I kind of filmed a little 2-ounce sample of, and the Green Dragon. I think it was called Green Dragon. It was a 3-year-old barley wine that Green Flash did with Alaskan Brewing. Yeah, I think it's Alaskan Brewing. But they did a collaboration beer. It was, by the time I got to it, it was 3 years old, and it was still crazy hoppy. I mean, I was talking to my other BGN guys. I was talking to Ryan, and I'm like, how did they even do that for it to be 3 years old and still be that bitter and that flavorful, and to be a barley wine? I think it was like 12% too. That's just one of those, like, that's crazy. I don't even want to think about when that was fresh, what that was like. It was amazing. I mean, I've had Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder was great. I love it. I don't think it's like one of the, like, now that I've had it a couple of times, I don't know that it's like, you should seek this out. This is amazing. There's nothing else like it. But I like Pliny a lot. KBS, I've had a bunch of that. I went to KBS release day. I've had that quite a few times.
Yeah.
The Firestone Walker series, Abacus, Parabola.
Yeah.
Their 14th anniversary was phenomenal. All those beers. One that I don't talk about as much, but that I think was like maybe my favorite beer last year, was the Boulevard Bourbon Barrel Quad, which was just amazing. Just a perfect, like, I heard Bourbon Barrel Quad, and I'm like, so it's a quad. You're adding bourbon barrels to it. That's just going to be a mess. And it wasn't. It worked. It was crazy good. It was just one of those revelatory beers where it's like, that's the kind of thing where I get it, And I actually have another bottle of that. I told a guy that was like one of my absolute favorite beers, and he had a bottle, and he gave it to me. So
Yeah.
I do occasionally get the little freebie from people that I talk to, so I'm happy to. But I trade back and forth. Like, he gives me something, and the next time I get something amazing, I'll give him.
Yeah.
I was really happy with King Henry from Goose Island. I did a review of that. Just mentioning that one, I think that one was one that really surprised me. If you can get that, definitely seek that out. I was a little skeptical of that one, but that was phenomenal stuff. That's a English barley. I think it's 13% or something. It was amazing.
What's I've heard you talk about, you have a podcast now. Like, is it on iTunes, or is it on your website, or how do you?
It is on iTunes. It is on my website. You can go to it took a fair amount of effort to get me on iTunes. So I'm very proud of being on iTunes. But if you go to iTunes, you can search for Beyond the Pour podcast, and it should come up. I'm only 6 episodes in, so it's still kind of, one of the little feeder things. And if you do listen to it and like it, I would appreciate anybody who listens to it should write a review and rate it, because it matters. It does matter to any.
How do you
listen to that?
Is it like through Blip? Like, who hosts it? How did you get on?
I use Buzzsprout for my podcast hosting.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna go through, because my blog is a WordPress blog, and I was gonna just you pay a certain amount per month, and you can get audio hosting on the site. But they do audio hosting, but they really don't really do anything for you in terms of giving you a podcast RSS feed, for instance, and giving you, like, setting you up to make it really easy to get on iTunes and that sort of thing. So all that work would have to be done by me. So I pay, like, I think $9 a month or something to Buzzsprout, and they take care. Basically, they take care of all that. It's a lot easier to get onto iTunes and to propagate everything, and they keep all the archives, and so it's like, all right, $9 a month, I can live with that. It makes it a lot easier. It was more expensive than going the WordPress route was going to be, but
Cool.
$9 a month, that's 2 pints in a bar. I can,
Yeah.
I'm not that broke. I'm broke, but I'm not that broke.
Last question. You were, your trademark for the last year or so was the big long beard. You always had a regular beard before that, as long as I've been watching you.
Right.
What's kind of like the history of the facial hair, and like, when did you first have a beard, and then when did you decide, I'm just gonna go all out with this, and then finally, what made you want to cut it off?
That's again a whole. We could do a whole 20 minutes on that. The beard was ever since I was in the 7th grade. I've been shaving since the 7th grade. Like
Wow.
I'm a hairy guy. I mean, I don't show this off a lot, but I'm a hairy guy.
We believe you.
Yeah, I've been shaving since the 7th grade. I'm also just a lazy guy. I don't like to have to shave all the time, and so like really very like early on, like when I was freshman in high school, I had a beard. I never thought of it that way, but I always had like this big like stubble, and then every like 3 or 4 weeks I'd go, okay, screw it, shave. Okay, now I'm normal again. This is how I want to look, or this is how I see myself. But realistically, I always kind of had that quite a bit of facial hair. Around the time I graduated high school, I just like, hey, maybe I should just have a beard. I never thought of that as like an option for me. Like, oh no, I'm supposed to shave. But then I'm like, pretty sure in high school, like let's
Yeah.
grow it. And that was the first time I like trimmed it. I had like the kind of cheeks and chin and mustache for a while, and I just shaved like the like right here. But then, so I had that for a while. I've gone through like every hairstyle you can imagine. Like if you go back through like old photos of me, it's like I've never done like mutton chops or anything weird like that, but I've done like a long like goatee that's like this. I've done the just the mustache.
Yeah.
Which my fiance loves, but everybody else thinks I look like a child molester, so I can't do that. I did the goatee for a long time, or the Van Dyke, which is the mustache with the beard, with the chin.
Yeah.
And then I just did a full beard. Like that was kind of like, okay, keep it fairly short, take out the trimmers. It's pretty easy. But winter 2010, I was I live in Michigan now, and it gets really cold. And I was like, I just didn't shave it I didn't trim it up for like 3 months or something like that. And it started, at first it got really awkward, and then it started to kind of get full and luscious, and it started to get like, and I'm like, let's see what it does. It's really cold. I don't want to trim it. So I just kind of kept going. And then I got to about 4 or 5 months, and it just kind of like, I'm going to let this go for a year. Like that was like, at that point, I'm like, let it go for a year. And so the beard just kind of got longer and longer and longer. And after a year, that would be December of last year, I'm like, okay, so I can trim it. So I went somewhere, and the guy like kind of cleaned it up, but I did no trimming on it beyond just right around the mustache, just to kind of just to make it easy for eating and stuff. But other than that, I did no touching on it for a whole year. Finally, I kind of let this guy trim it, and he did like nothing to the length, just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. And then it just kind of came to the point where it just gets in the way. And my skin starts to get irritated after a long time without shaving it at all. It starts to get sensitive, and it starts to kind of, I get like bumps or whatever underneath, and I get pimples, and they kind of, it's just kind of one of the, like those little things that get annoying after a while. And so I'm like, all right, I've got to trim it at least. Then I thought, my YouTube community is going to be freaked out.
Yeah.
So the thought was, okay, let's just shave it. It's nice to shave it. I'm going to grow it back. Everybody freaking out watching me. I've gotten 1,000 comments on it already. It will come back. My plan is probably just kind of trim it up for another, a few days, and then just let it start coming back. And you will be amazed at how fast it comes back.
You should go till the end of the summer, since it's not gonna be cold again for another 8-9 months.
But I'm just too lazy to shave. I mean, I shaved it at like 10:30 this morning. It's currently about 8 o'clock, and I'm already like, I can feel it already. If I were to take pictures of me like 2 or 3 days from now, there'll be distinct stubble. It's just one of those things. I'd have to shave every day, and it's too annoying.
Yeah.
I'm just too hairy. Plus, I'm telling you, if you can grow a big beard like that, the ladies love it. I promise you. I am engaged. I'm very happily engaged, but it was definitely one of those things where there were.
Well, it makes you stand out in a crowd.
Makes you stand out, and there is a certain class of women who will look at it and stare.
Yeah, I guess.
A mischievous way, and then like actively want to touch it. And when I'd let them touch it, they loved it. It was awesome. But I'm very happily engaged, so there's no real point to me doing that except just to make other people happy. But
all right, well, that does it for the overlong 2012 edition of Interview with Dan Harper, the Endosymbiosis Beyond the Poor podcast. So thanks, Dan, for doing the interview and the beer review we just did. So go check them out. Put links to everything below And guess we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, man. Have
Yep.
a nice night.
See ya. Bye.